FPV drones have traditionally had fixed camera angle on their FPV camera. And that means that if you want to go faster, you have to look down at the ground, and if you want to slow down, you have to look up at the sky. And that can be a real problem if you're trying to chase a subject, like, well, for example, this mountain biker here. Because you need to be able to keep him in the camera frame, but you also need to be able to adjust the speed of the drone to go faster and slower as he speeds up and slows down. And he's going to speed up and slow down a lot as he goes down this mountain. Fast on the straights, slow through the switchbacks. With a fixed camera angle, the shots that you're seeing here would have been much, much more difficult. The drone that we're looking at in this video has the MEDLIN drone FPV camera gimbal system on it. And it's almost seamless how Gab 707, Gabriel Coker, the pilot, is able to adjust the up tilt to adjust his speed and position relative to the rider. He can look down right there by tilting the gimbal down and not have to pitch forward and full speed into a tree. He can get close and low and look up, and he's doing it super seamlessly, so it's almost easy to overlook what's really going on here. Instead, take a look at this shot. You see he's looking down at the pilot and he's moving forward. He starts to overtake the pilot, but then he tilts the camera up so the drone can slow down. And now he's just holding position sideways, barely moving. And now he's gotten in tight and he's kind of looking up at the rider. Wow, really tight. My goodness. This is an incredibly flexible and powerful system. We're going to take a look at it today. I'm not going to fly it as well as Gab 707, but I'm going to do my best. I'm Joshua Bardwell. You're going to learn something today. So here's how this thing works. On my goggles, there is a head tracker module, and it's got an accelerometer in it that detects the tilt of my head. Now, when the switch on the radio is in the middle position, the angle is fixed. It doesn't move. If I switch the switch forward, then this slider on the side of the radio controls the angle. And by moving that slider, I can dial in a fixed up tilt anywhere from, well, it looks like about 15 or 20 degrees up to, even some down tilt. But the real cool trick is if I flip the switch back, then, hang on, let me put him down on my head. There we go, that's more like it. And one of the big challenges with demonstrating this system is communicating to you how I'm moving my head and what position the gimbal is in as I'm flying around. Because all you're gonna see is just the quad is flying. So I'm gonna have this second camera running and tracking my head position, but in addition, I have put on screen this value here, and this is RSSI, but it's not RSSI. See, if you tell Betaflight that any aux channel is the RSSI channel, then you can put that aux channel value in the OSD, and that's going to let you see the gimbal position in the analog OSD. Watch. So here, it's all the way up, and you can see our quote RSSI is 99. And here, it's all the way down, and you can see it's reading 0. And when it's at 49, that's the middle position. So this is up tilt, down tilt. You'll be able to track that position. So here we are with just a little up tilt per usual. But if I fly up here, I can tilt down and kind of come around this tree. I can see that I got a lot more down tilt. I'm only at like 35 on the RSSI scale. I could tilt down even more. Now I'm turning my head, that's not really going to make a difference. But then I can bring my head up and fly out of here. So cool. Tilt up a little more to pick up some speed. That's as fast as I can really go. And now we'll come up here and lower my, oh gosh, video's getting sketchy. Lower my head. Down. So look down here. Oh, it's so different flying with this tilt. Look down. And then I'm going to pitch forward and raise my head and dive in. Woo! Raise my head way back up. That's my neutral position, is to raise my head and go back to the up tilt that I'm used to. What a cool freaking Just so many cool possibilities here that you just can't get with a fixed camera. Until now, I've been using the down tilt on the camera to look down on things, and that's sort of intuitive. But you can also use it to fly backwards. Check it out. Can I do like down the driveway here backwards? The more down I look, the faster I'll go. All right, here we go. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. That's so cool. Oh, my battery's dead. I gotta bring it in. Now let's talk a little bit about how to set this up. And I think the first thing you're going to want to do is set up a control to give you manual control of the servo. And that's going to be useful during the setup process. But as you saw when I was flying, it's also going to be useful if the head tracker gets glitchy or something. You'll be able to quickly switch it back to something you can manually control. And so here's how we're going to do that in the radio. I'm going to press the model key, and then I'm going to page to the mixes screen on my radio. I'm doing this with the Radiomaster TX16 because it has a great big beautiful color screen that makes it easy to demonstrate. However, you can do everything I'm about to show you on any OpenTX or EdgeTX radio. Some of them will have a smaller screen, and so you may have to squint a little bit to set it up, but the basic process I'm going to show you will work on all of these radios. And I'm going to scroll down to where I've got channel 7, which is the aux channel that, oh, the Radiomaster also has a touch screen. You might need to use your jog wheel. I'm going to scroll down to channel 7, and that's the aux channel that my flight controller is set up to talk to the servo on. Your flight controller is going to be listening to one of these aux channels, and that aux channel is then going to control the servo. And you can see here that I've got two mixer lines. The one that is labeled TR6 we're going to set aside for a second, and then this one here is labeled RS, and that is the side slider. Let's just edit that and take a quick look. The source for this mix is the right-hand slider, and if you need to change that, you can click once to edit, and then you can move the control that you want to control it with, and it will auto-fill. The weight is going to be 100%. The offset is going to be 0. These are all standard setups, and basically that just makes this slider control the output of this channel. However, the one thing you're going to need to do a little bit differently than normal is the switch setting. You see, you're going to want to have a switch that lets you change, I recommend, between 3 settings. One is going to be a fixed up tilt. That switch is just going to lock the up tilt at a certain position. One is going to be the slider controls the up tilt, and one is going to be the head tracker controls the up tilt. So in this case, I am using switch SG, which is this shoulder switch. I've just kind of got these controls over on my right hand, I guess. And what we're going to do is we're going to click this, and we're going to choose the position for switch SG that is going to mean that the slider is controlling it. And in my case, I've selected SG forward, and we can just move the switch, and you can see there it will autofill whichever position the switch is in. So that we can see if we go back out to the main screen here in my channel monitor, we can see that channel 7 is being controlled by the side slider as long as switch SG is in the forward position. Otherwise, it does nothing. Now we're going to go back to the mixes screen, and the next thing we need to set up is the input from the head tracker. This is the head tracker. It is actually a separate open source project that's being used by MEDLIN DRONE, and it basically has an accelerometer in it. That means that it can tell when it's being tilted, and it outputs that information over this plug. The plug uses a standard, this looks like a mono audio cable. It looks like a standard mono audio cable to me, and it plugs in there. And then here on top of my radio, we've got the trainer port or buddy box input, which gets the other end of that cable. If your radio doesn't have a buddy box input or a trainer port, then you're not going to be able to use the head tracker. There just isn't any way to get that signal into the radio. Next, we're going to press the model key, and in the model setup page, all the way at the bottom of the page, the trainer mode needs to be set to master/jack. Master/jack. I think that's the default, but you should check to make sure that that is actually what it's set to. And when we've done that, we can then press the model key and we can page to the mixes screen and we can set up a new mix. That's going to be this one here. I'll just edit this. Now, the source for this mix is going to be TR6. That is trainer channel number 6. The way that the trainer input works is the first 4 channels are the main control channels, and then we've got aux channels 5, 6, 7, and 8 are aux 1, 2, 3, and 4. The setting for this head tracker is that it will output this information on channel 6. It's possible to set it other ways, but that's how this one has been set up, and that's what I suggest you try at first. So the source for this is going to be trainer input 6. And the weight is going to be 100%. The offset's going to be 0. And if we come down here to switch, we're going to choose a switch position that lets this head tracker control the servo. And in this case, the switch position is going to be SG all the way down. Okay, that's fine. Now at this point we can test the functionality of the head tracker, but we're going to need to power it up first, and we can do that with a 2S battery. Hold on one second, I'll get one. And we'll just go ahead and plug this in. And I can see, I don't know if you can see, but it's lit up inside there, and it should be working. Okay, well, I've learned something new today, and that is that if you have a mixer line that depends on a trainer input and the trainer signal is not there, the mixer line will not become activated even if all the other conditions hold true. And you could see there I had to kind of wiggle this a little bit and unplug it just a little bit to get the trainer signal to be stable. I only just started doing that. It makes me wonder if I'm using the wrong cable or something. But now the trainer signal is recovered and this is active, and we can go back and we can look as we move the head tracker. We can look and we can see that channel 7 is bobbing around. Now we're going to want to figure out exactly how this is supposed to be oriented on the goggles. So I'm going to hold this and I'm going to tilt it one way. And you can see that as I tilt it one way, channel 7 goes that way, and I tilt it the other way and channel 7 goes that way. That's good. That's what we'd like to see. If I rotate this the other direction, things don't work like we expect. We can see that as I tilt it up and down there, it kind of doesn't behave as expected, and that means that the orientation is not right. I mean, theoretically you could mount it flat on the goggles, and as you tip your head forward it could go like this, but you can see that it's kind of jumping around and moving unpredictably, and that means the orientation that we're holding it in is not right. The way that my head tracker is set up is that it's mounted on the side of the goggles, like on the side of the head or on your head strap. And there's actually a clip that you can print to put on this that clips it onto your head strap. It's not very secure, and I don't recommend it for actual serious use, but just for temporary use it's okay. So I've stuck mine to the side of my goggles with some double-sided tape, and again you can see that as I tip my head forward it goes one way, and as I tip my head back it goes the other way. Now there's a button on the side or front of this, and that is the calibrate accelerometer button. So wherever this is, when I press that button on the side, watch channel 7, it will go to 0. So what you're going to do is you're going to hold your head kind of in a neutral position. You're going to push that button, and that's going to center the servo on however your head is at that moment. And then you'll have down and up from there. The next thing we need to do is adjust the endpoints of the servo. And if you're familiar with building fixed wings and working with servos, this is not going to be a surprise for you. But if you only have experience with multi-rotors, this is going to be something new. What I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in the battery, and I've got my props off as you can see for safety. And then I'm going to put this switch in the position that lets me control the servo with the side slider. Okay? So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the slider all the way to one endpoint. And I think what's going to make the most sense is to put it all the way down. And then with an M2 screwdriver, I'm going to loosen this screw, and I'm going to adjust the position of this control horn so that the camera is looking down as much as I would like to look down when I'm all the way down. Let's do that. So now that it's loose, I can kind of lift it off, and you can see there's a notched gear there. And then depending on how I place that, I can have more downward tilt including like almost 90 degrees of downward tilt. But of course, the more downward tilt I've got, the less upward tilt I've got. We've only got about 90 degrees of throw on this servo. So I'm going to put that about where I want it, and then without tightening the screw, you can still move the servo. So then I'm going to put the control horn back on. You don't need to tighten the screw down, and I'm just going to move the side slider on my radio to check the extent of the travel and make sure it's going to be something I'm going to be happy with. So here's all the way down, and here's all the way up. And I'm kind of most concerned about all the way up because that's how I'm used to flying a quad, with a certain amount of up tilt. And the default position that I'm going to go to if I start, well, you saw at the beginning of the video, I'm going to want up tilt and I'm going to want to fly it like I expect it to. So I got about, looks like about 20 degrees of up tilt, and looks like a little more than that, maybe close to 35 or 40 degrees of down tilt. And let's just, you know, assume that's okay. If not, you can adjust the position of this control horn to try to tweak that a little bit within the sort of limits of geometry. Now there's one more thing I'm going to want to do with this switch. I've got one position for the side slider control, one position for head tracker control. I'd like a third position that's just a default sort of oh crap bailout position, and I'm going to set that up as follows. I'm going to go to the mixer screen. I'm going to scroll down to channel 7, which is the one I'm using, and I'm going to click and insert after, and that'll create a new mixer line. The source for that mixer line is going to be max. Just scroll down to find max, and that means it's going to output a fixed value. Why do they call it max instead of, I don't know, something more sensical? But that's what they call it. We're then going to go down, and we're going to go down to switch, and we've got switch SG in the down position is the head tracker, and the up position is the side slider. So I guess the middle position, we're going to put SG in the middle position, and that will fill in that here for the switch parameter. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just adjust the weight parameter, and that's going to change the servo position that we're going to go to when we put this switch here. And I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it at 100% all the way up, because that's 20 degrees of up tilt is the most sort of familiar thing for me. Great. And now if we back out, we can see we've got 3 settings here for channel 7. The SG up is the trainer port. SG middle is all the way up 20 degrees. And SG down is the slider. Great. If you decide, by the way, that you don't want it that way, like for... Why are you taking so long to get there? Why are you taking so long to get there? You can move faster than that. Oh, now it made a weird noise. I've ruined it. What are you doing? I've ruined it. The whole quad just rebooted. The servo is not happy. I have killed the flight controller. I smell it. The whole flight controller is fucking dead. I killed the flight controller. Oh my god. The 5-volt regulator died. The servo freaked out. The servo pulled too much power from the 5-volt regulator, and the 5-volt regulator died. I promise you that's what just happened. I don't know why. I'm gonna ask MEDLIN DRONE what happened and get his input. So you cannot do this. My flight controller's dead. Oh, it's alive! Whee! No, it's dead. It just died. Just crapped out. It was alive for 1 second. Gonna be alive? Where's the fire? No, it lights up briefly and then it dies. I don't know what just happened, but that's how you set up your radio. Maybe it was on the way out, and that's why the servo was freaking out, because the voltage was dropping. Yeah, I don't know, man. Let's go look at the flight controller configuration. I'm going to guess if I plug in USB that this thing will still work and we can read the config off it so you can see how to set up the servo. Yay! Isn't life fun? As far as setting up the flight controller goes, the main thing you're going to need to do is set up the ability to pass the aux channel from the controller out to the servo itself. And Betaflight's servo setup is notoriously fiddly. I've got a full tutorial on setting up Betaflight servos, and if any of the stuff I say in this video kind of seems incomplete or maybe it doesn't make sense, I'm going to recommend you go check out the full servos setup tutorial. I'll link that down in the video description. But in short, what you need to do is, number one, in the configuration tab, you need to make sure that servo tilt is enabled. Then in the servos tab, you're going to choose which aux channel you are going to be using to talk to the servo. And we can see here we've selected aux 3, which is channel 7. But if for some reason you are already using channel 7 for something else, you could pick any of the other aux channels that your system supports. You're just going to check the box here, and that's going to control which aux channel is going to be used to control this servo. So in your radio, we've got channel 7, aux 3 is what we are manipulating based on the position of the slider or the head tracker input or whatever. And then here, that's got to match what we select here. And then the final thing you need to do is go here in the CLI and tell the flight controller where you've soldered the signal wire to the servo. So the most common way that you're going to do that is to use the LED strip pad on the flight controller. And what you're going to do is you're going to type resource and look for resource LED strip 1, and then there's going to be a number after that. And what you're going to do is you're going to type resource servo 1. In fact, we should have this here already. Yeah, look, they've already done it. Resource servo 1, and you're going to type that same number. This would, of course, mean that you couldn't use programmable LEDs and the servo at the same time, but that's probably a trade-off you might be willing to make. The other thing you could do is you could use one of your spare motor outputs. We only have 4 motors. This flight controller may not have additional motor outputs, but if you did have additional motor outputs, then you could use one of them instead. You would just look for resource motor 5, and whatever number was after that, you would type resource servo 1 A15 or whatever number, and that assigns that servo output to that pin number. Again, if you need more information on this, my full servo setup tutorial is linked in the video description below. At this point, if you are super excited about trying this system out, there is a link to MEDLIN Drone's website down in the video description. All of the parts to make this system can be purchased from MEDLIN Drone, or if you have 3D printer, maybe all of the parts are actually printable by you at home. There are full, extremely detailed and extremely thorough setup instructions, and it's one of the reasons that I didn't go into a super lot of how-to depth, make this a 45-minute tutorial, because MEDLIN Drone's instructions are super good all by themselves. This is really cool. I don't think it's going to replace the way that freestyle pilots normally do things, number one, because of the weight, but number two, more importantly, because of the durability issues. This is not for quads that are going to be crashing into bandos, but for cinematic stuff, this is really freaking cool. And just the addition of a gimbal on just the pitch axis really opens up the potential for what an FPV drone can do without fundamentally changing its character into something it's not, which is kind of what it feels like a 2-axis or a 3-axis gimbal might do. This is super cool. Check it out. MEDLIN Drones linked in the video description. Also, thank you to Gab707 and Remy, the guy who's riding right now. Their socials are down in the video description as well, and definitely check them out. Happy flying.